I think that the highlight in the past year is the institutional adoption of Bitcoin and the maturation of the asset class, along with the education of millions and millions of people as to why they might want digital property, what is a digital commodity, and what's its place in the macro economy. Now, to be clear, I still think we're very early, but that phrase, there are decades when nothing happens, and you know, weeks when decades happen. It really refers to paradigm shifts, and if you think about the paradigm shift when automobiles arrived, there's the famous snapshot in New York City where there's just a bunch of horse and buggies, and 10 years later, it's all cars. And in that 10 years, you adopted it. And I remember, standing once on the Pantheon and or on the Acropolis, and I'm like taking a photo and about to post it, and I think to myself, what's different about this? And I think, well, last time I was here, maybe a decade ago, I had no smartphone, I had no iPhone, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, you couldn't post it. There were no, digital photography didn't exist. So a decade goes by and you're like, you're trying to remember, you remember back in college, I went to college, we didn't have laptops, Yeah. So when I was in college, there were no laptops. And I thought, well, what if I'd had a spreadsheet when I was doing engineering? I went with an HP 15C calculator, and we had notebooks, and we wrote down 20 pages of calculations in a notebook with the calculator. And I remember seeing people saying, well, you got a calculator? We use slide rules. And you fast forward a decade and people have laptops. You fast forward another decade, they have internet. You fast forward another decade, they've got YouTube and simulations. And now you're starting to question whether or not you even needed to go to college at all. Maybe you could have just sat at home. So every decade, there's some profound paradigm shift. And the thing that hits you about a paradigm shift is it's such an out of the blue idea that no one can conceive of why you would even want it. So, it took a while before people thought maybe radio waves have a place, right? Or maybe electricity has a place in the world. And why would I want a railroad? But I think now we're staring at this paradigm shift of digital energy. And why would I want to move a block of $1 billion of something from point A to point B through cyberspace in a split second with instant final settlement, right? Initially, if you roll the clock back a decade, we didn't have it. Every financial crisis we've had, right, in the history of the world, and we've had 10,000 of them. There have been 10,000 currency collapses, from the Lydians to the Athenians to the Spartans to the Romans to the Venetians, to the Brits multiple times, to the Carthaginians. You could just go on, and the Persians, and go on and on and on and on. And the history is full of examples of an empire rises, someone mints a currency, the successors or the children of the conqueror debase the currency, the grandchildren debase it more, the great-grandchildren forget how they actually got the power, they spend everything, go wacky crazy. Pretty soon the economy collapses, you can't pay your soldiers, they all defect. And the barbarians come over the gate and they take everything, including your debased gold. They melt it down, they purify it, they mint their own coin, and the cycle starts again. That's literally taken place 10,000 times. When von Schliemann dug up ancient Troy, he dug up like 19 ancient Troys. He found 19 cities buried under each city. Everybody said, good place to build a city. They would build it. They would rise over a couple hundred years. They would crash and burn. 200 years would go by. Someone else comes along and says, wow, good place to build a city. We do it again. We do it again. We do it again. That's the history of money. And that's the history of economics. Along comes Satoshi, and we've got the white paper, and, January 3rd, 2009, we launched this little monetary virus or this idea virus. and it kind of burns very, very low level for a while, and people aren't sure of it. And it's a gimmicky thing, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and waiting for, well, why would you need it? And you had to be a